Hi, I'm Skull. This is the second session campaign diary for my group's playthrough of the Abomination Vaults for Pathfinder 2E. Before we get into the juicy details of this session, I just wanted to talk about a bit of the prep work that I did for this session. A couple of things that made the game a little bit easier to run for me and the way that I kind of think about things, as well as some adjustments I made to keep the game moving forward at a proper pace. So, as some of you might recall from the first campaign diary, I had a player, Ornifex, who wanted to use practical research as a downtime activity in order to enhance their faith and attempt to progress their understanding of their religion. Obviously, that is not quite how practical research is intended to be used, but I want to encourage that kind of thinking and that kind of role playing. So, between sessions, I designed a new downtime activity called Meditating Upon Faith. As you can see, the requirements for this are to be able to access spells through the belief of a deity, so clerics or anyone else that has the ability to cast spells based on their religion are allowed to use this downtime activity. And what it basically allows them to do is spend time meditating upon their chosen faith or their chosen deity, and through making religion skill checks, they can progress their understanding of their faith and unlock some of the uncommon or rare spell options that they might not otherwise have available. Because the Cosmic Caravan is a pantheon and has multiple deities involved in it, I decided to make it into almost like a skill tree, where the player can decide which gods they want to focus their efforts on following, and as such unlock spells that are kind of themed towards those groups of gods. The groupings are a little arbitrary. I kind of split them into evil gods with Glotius and Yog-Sothoth, the benevolent greater gods with Desna and Serenray. Ketafis as an elven god is kind of put on their own as an elven player who might want to take this downtime activity could focus towards the elven god. And then the black butterfly, Pelura, and Ashava are grouped together as kind of like the more abstract gods. As you can see, following one of these paths requires them to build up faith in order to unlock the spells they want to take. So if the character decided they wanted to meditate on Desna and Serenray, every time they make a downtime activity and spend time doing this, they roll a religion check. If they succeed this religion check, then they increase their faith by 1 for every day that they have been meditating upon the gods. A critical success allows them to have like a really strong understanding, and they get 2 faith for those days. A failure means that they are unable to determine their deity's will and just don't make any progress. On a critical failure, the character begins to feel a bit lost, like they're unsure of what their deity's will is. So as such, next time they would be able to take this downtime activity, instead they have to go out into the world and perform some of the religion's edicts, just to try and get back into like the feeling of that faith, try and restore the natural sense of belief. We haven't had time for downtime in my game specifically since I created this, so it's unused currently, but Ornifex has said that they are probably going to go towards Desna and Serenray, as those are the kinds of deities they want to embody, and those are the kind of spells that they want to unlock. This is the first bit of homebrewing that I have done for Pathfinder 2E, so the balance I'm not entirely sure of. I feel like it's not anything too crazy, they're just unlocking spells and having to spend a bit of time to do so. At the moment, we just have the one created for the Cosmic Caravan, but if other players pick up religions, I will likely do something for all of the pantheons or all of the religions that become active in my game specifically. But this is definitely an idea that you can steal if you want to give your clerical characters something to work towards during downtime that isn't just earning income. So another bit of prep that I did was to go through the first floor of the Abomination Vaults, the Gauntlight Ruins, and take every room, mark it down, and then mark down which exploration actions will be triggered in each room. I noticed that as a previous D&D DM, the exploration actions are not something I'm used to, and I found myself kind of brushing over them a lot or forgetting to give the players the information that they would learn. So in order to streamline this a little bit, I went through, took search, investigate, and detect magic for all of the rooms on the floor, and wrote down ahead of time what they will get and what the DCs are for them to get those results. I then let my players know about this new thing out of game so that they know to roll immediately, and then if I tell them something, they know it. If I don't, they no longer need to keep asking me like, hey, does my exploration actually get me anything here? Because I've now got it in a very easy, very convenient way to just glance over. Yep, they hit the DC. Here's the information they know. Lastly, another big thing I did was I updated this first floor to be suitable for 5 level 2 characters. My players went through the beginner's box. I'm sure a lot of your players probably did as well. And the adventure assumes that players level 1 for this floor. There's a couple of ways you can handle this. You could just run it as normal and have kind of an easier first floor as your players are a little bit ahead. And because they are higher level and experience is level based in this game, they'll be getting less experience, so it'll slow down their leveling up. But I know my players like a challenge. They're very tactical. They want to feel challenged. So instead of doing that, what I did was I went through, I fully updated the floor to be for level 2 characters. And now my players are going to go through, and we're just not going to reward experience for things on this floor. Because this floor is supposed to be level 1, and then they're supposed to be level 2 when they're exploring the second floor. I'm going to give them experience for the second floor, but I'm not going to give them experience for this floor, even though it's been buffed up to be 4 level 2 players. Because I basically don't want them to get one step ahead of the adventure in levels and have the harder fights become quite trivial. That's just how we're doing it. It's not necessarily something I would recommend, but having talked to my players, they seem fine with it. And it basically just means this first floor is going to be disregarding the experience, and just letting them play through it in more of an adventure-based, natural way instead of like, oh, we need more experience to hit that level up. Okay, so onto the actual session. This was a very combat-heavy session for us. So this campaign diary is probably going to go into quite a bit of detail of those fights. This might not be something I do for all of the campaign diaries. As we get more story-based sessions, I might lean more towards the story and kind of summarize the fights. But as this session was basically just 3 fights, I'm going to kind of go into detail of how they went. And because we're early on, it might be quite nice to sort of talk about how my players fight, get you guys used to the strategies that they're using, and yeah, just have like a general discussion about the encounters. So, picking up from where we left off, we recapped the first room of the adventure, which is the damp entrance. Most of the group headed inside, while a couple did remain outside. Rock, our rogue, went inside first to check the way. Waiting inside were, of course, 3 Mitflits, and being pranksters and rather unintelligent, they called down from the hiding spots above in an attempt to convince Rock to eat the piles of grey mess on the floor. We, of course, know this is Mitflit poop, and since the Mitflits can only speak Undercommon, or Sackvroth now, as it's since the remaster, this ploy, of course, had no hope of succeeding. Naturally, Rock wanted to see who was calling out to him, so he peered up through the cobwebs and spotted the Mitflits, which caused them to anger and begin pelting him with weak darts as they realised that their game had been ruined. To build a bit of confusion for those waiting outside, I decided to keep the Mitflits tokens hidden until the majority of the party had found them using the seek action, upon which I revealed them to everybody. As a few members of my party lack reliable ranged attacks, the Mitflits lasted a lot longer than I expected them to in this encounter, before needing to flee. Thanks to Milo, our thaumaturge, the party learned that the Mitflits are weak to cold iron. This is a detail that became unexpectedly and incorrectly useful to Ornifex as a lover of the Needle Darts spell. Unfortunately, while watching the footage back, I did notice that the spell requires her to actually have a piece of cold iron if she wants to use the cold iron variety of the Needle Dart spell. This is kind of my mistake. I'm not used to reading the spells properly. This is a bad habit from 5th edition. As in 5th edition, all the useful information is always at the bottom of the spell. So I've gotten into this kind of bad habit of just skipping to the end of a spell. Pretty bad. Something I need to work on. Clearly doesn't work for Pathfinder. So I will unfortunately have to bring her the sad news next session that she cannot use the cold iron version of needle darts until she has some cold iron. But it should be easy enough to fix. Just go to town and grab some next time they're there. 2 of the Mitflits did make it out onto the connecting vines and made their escape. But one was burnt to death before it could make a run for it. You see the other Mitflits, as that one is hit, look over in sudden shock, as though none of them had even considered the idea that any of them might get hurt. Actually, never mind, I don't need to, as the double damage will absolutely incinerate this poor little Mitflit as he's beginning to turn and run with his friends. Sesto runs on in and ignites the poor little dude, who very quickly singes.
I sound really mean now.
It is mean. So, during this speedy getaway, the adventure tells you that the Mitflits cast the Bane spell before they run away. However, I'm not sure if this is something to do with a remaster, or whether the spell has changed at some point. At the time of recording this, the Bane spell is an emanation of 5 feet from the caster. That obviously isn't going to affect anyone as soon as the Bane affects them. The Mitflit is then running away, so they're leaving that radius. Perhaps it was intended to stop reactive strikes or attacks of opportunity, but he's up in the rafters, so melee attacks can't reach him anyway. Maybe I'm missing something here, but it doesn't feel right either way. But the adventure does say to use it. I ended up not using it because it just didn't feel necessary. It had no benefit. But let me know if I'm reading into this wrong. If there is actually a use for this, then I would like to know. Because Mitflits obviously a large part of this first floor. With the Mitflits fled or dead, the group discussed the likelihood of the Mitflits being the cause of the Gauntlight glow.
I think those were Mitflits.
Have you seen them before?
No, but I've read about them.
Oh.
They're some kind of gremlin creatures. Usually called mites, actually. Because they kind of act like mites.
I mean, I can see why. Are they normal? Is this something we need to be worried about? Is this what Rin would have been worried about?
I don't think so. I mean, from what I know, they're kind of pathetic and weak. And cowardly as well.
They proved that, didn't they?
Yeah. But I also think they usually serve more powerful creatures.
Oh my god, have we got another group of kobolds situation again? Is there going to be a big one hidden somewhere?
There might be.
They decided it probably wasn't the Mitflits causing the Gauntlight to glow, but still wanted to investigate further and get a little bit of payback for the ambush. Ornifex showed an interest in wanting to find out how long the Mitflits had been here and occupying the ruin. Through analysing the state of the overgrowth of the ruins and the quantity of the excrement, she determined that while the ruins are hundreds of years old, the Mitflits probably haven't been here for longer than a few months, based on the quantity and decay of their poop. This led to a conversation of why are they here? I'm glad my players are already thinking about these kind of questions, as it'll hopefully lead them to find answers. Answers that we know will lead them down into the Abomination Vaults.
I wonder why they chose this place to stay at. Seems not very... Oh, nice to be here.
I agree.
I wonder if they came near the town and this was one of the only abandoned places. There's not really many places to hang out near the town that's this empty and that quiet.
Yeah. But that light... It makes me think they're here for a reason.
Whatever the reason is, it's either not a threat to them or just not a threat at all. Since you said they were cowardly, they wouldn't stay here if they were in danger, right?
Yeah, but they might not be in danger.
Oh, of course, yeah.
They might be serving something powerful, nonetheless.
Well, that's what we're here to find out.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
With their theorizing done and their weird love of door sound effects satiated,
Classic good
noise.
stuff.
Yeah,
I
very
love the
good
noise.
They pushed forward towards the decrepit drawbridge. May and Ornifex, our current searchers, both noticed that the bridge had been tampered with, and the group began making plans to bypass this obvious trap. A few options they considered included attempting to long jump, throwing Sesto, using ropes, and even pole vaulting. Some of these are good ideas, but here's what actually happened. Sesto was the first to get across, utilising his pest form spell and becoming a rat. He simply scurried across as a tiny creature. He didn't necessarily need to shrink down, but they don't know that. May attempted to long jump. She first entered her stoked flame stance, which ups her movement speed to 30 feet, and thus makes her standard leap distance 15 feet. By doing this, she only needed an extra 5 feet from the long jump action. It was a sound plan and had every chance of working, unless that happens. Her failed long jump caused her to impact the bridge at its weakest point and the entire structure to crumble underneath her weight. As she'd made it most of the way, she did have the opportunity to grab an edge, and she managed to succeed this roll and was able to pull herself onto the far edge next to Sesto. Having made everything much more complicated for the rest of her party, the rest of the group had to get a little bit more creative. Rock attempted to balance across the broken debris of the bridge, and a critical success allowed him to balance his way across with a quick, careful shuffle, and then he just pulled himself on the far side, and that left just Ornifex and Milo. At this point, the space between the bridge and the door was getting pretty tight, so May, Rock, and Sesto decided to open the door to make space. Little did they know, by doing this, they attracted the attention of the Mitflits and their partially trained Mudflicker Maggots. Initiative was rolled while Milo and Ornifex were still in the gatehouse on the other side of the collapsed bridge. May, Rock, and Sesto were forced to engage the enemies at this point in order to give their companions time to get across. In this encounter, I wanted to portray the primitive training that the Mitflits had achieved, while also showing the lack of detailed commands. The Mitflits attempted to utilize basic strategy, but the Maggots only followed the very basic command of "Eat them!" As such, the Mitflits pushed forward a little bit, but then readied darts to throw at any heroes who came too close. The first of the two Maggots, however, overextended themselves by using all their actions to slowly stride forward towards their targets. This put it alone and outnumbered with the three heroes. Sure enough, as Rock and Sesto took up defensive positions, May rushed to the Maggot and with a critical flurry of blows, one-shot the Maggot. Her attacks do have the non-lethal trait, so the Maggot was left unconscious but alive. But the Mitflits don't know this, and they screamed in shock and regret. Back at the bridge, both Milo and Ornifex attempted to follow in Rock's example and balance across the bridge. Unfortunately, due to some bad rolls, both ended up sprawled in the swampy waters below. The remaining Mitflits pushed forward and assaulted May with tiny, weak darts and short sword strikes, eager to stop the villain that had killed their beloved Maggot, in their eyes. The final Maggot shuffled forward, nervous but hungry, and while it couldn't reach anyone, it did end up safely behind Mitflit lines. Sesto's cover protected him from incoming darts, while the final Mitflits pulled the unconscious Maggot away from the front lines. Sesto summoned his Eidolon Tiny, which immediately demoralized the Mitflits assaulting him. This is the first time the party have used Demoralize, and I'm really happy to see that they're now getting used to their more common actions, and are beginning to use some of these really interesting extra actions that make Pathfinder the great tactical game that it is. May is quickly becoming our most reliable DPS as she proceeded to sweep across the room, dispatching these low-health enemies with ease and style. Between her and Rock, Mitflit bodies fell throughout the room. Down in the swampy waters, Milo and Ornifex began to climb to the ruins, but neither made very much progress. I can't state this enough, but I've never seen someone roll as consistently bad at climbing than Milo, and Ornifex is proving to be just as unlucky at the moment. By this point, some of the Mitflits were in a position to utilise their Vengeful Anger, an ability that lets them deal extra damage to the last creature that hurt them, provided they are not currently frightened. Rock took a beating due to this ability. Meanwhile, the last living Maggot in the fight finally caught up to May and bit into her thigh. It took the opportunity to grab her and then gnawed the grabbed leg. Overall, it was a pretty good display from the maggot as to why the Mitflits have been using them for protection. Tiny ran over and slammed into the maggot. In a gross mixture of panic and being squeezed under the weight of the wolven eidolon, the maggot regurgitated, spewing vomit directly into May's fresh wounds and causing her to become sickened. May broke free from the maggot's grab and swiftly dispatched the second maggot. The 3 surviving Mitflits screamed in desperation as the creatures that spent so much time training were slain. At long last, Milo and Ornifex breached the climb and finally engaged in the battle. With the arrival of their remaining party members, both sides clashed in a desperate brawl. During the skirmish, Rock is hit by a Vengeful Anger crit from one of the Mitflits, bringing him dangerously low in HP. May, Rock, and Sesto each slay one of the remaining enemies in quick succession, finally bringing the combat to a close. The group spent 10 minutes healing, during which Rock executed the unconscious enemies that were spared by May's non-lethal attacks. May seemed a little put off by Rock's actions here, but is yet to bring it up with him. I'm hoping there'll be some interesting roleplay when they get a moment to breathe, and she can voice her disapproval of this. The group discussed the damage to the ruins, and made some assumptions about who was to blame.
Yeah, so probably it happened during that battle between the Rose Guard and Belcora. At least that's my assumption. I just hope there's no scary magical traps laying about. Guys, there might be scary magical traps laying about.
I should be able to see them.
Good.
Oh.
Should.
Well, maybe you go first then.
I mean, I don't think there
No.
are any. Like, it's been so long and a lot of people have gone through here over the years. But you never know. There was powerful magic at work here at some point. That blew all of this up.
Eager to push forward to where the initial fleeing Mitflits went, they grouped up behind the door to the sinkhole room. A successful perception check allowed them to hear the sound of scrapping Mitflits. Now, I'm not sure whether it was due to frustration from being otherwise engaged in the previous fight, or whether it was due to just not considering everybody's initiative in his planning, but Milo made some very costly misplays in this fight. As you can see, Milo is kind of isolated in the initiative order. There will be a lot of enemies taking turns before his party can react. Nevertheless, Milo pushed into the room alone, eager to engage the enemies. This left him as the sole target to 4 Mitflit. To make matters worse, he critically failed a feint, causing him to make himself off guard. Darts pepper him, and the precarious positioning makes him vulnerable to flanking, and over the next few seconds, Milo is hit by a barrage of attacks. Even though this situation might have come about from tactical errors, I actually love the roleplay connotations of this situation. Milo, the young, inexperienced adventurer, finds himself unable to help his team in a large battle. Frustrated and eager to prove himself worthy of the team, he lets his pride get the better of him, and he rushes into combat without thinking things through. Rock even offered to be the one to open the door, but Milo refused.
Wouldn't it be either May or myself opening that door?
Ah, it's fine. I'm also... I'm a warrior. I say with my book in hand. And then I open the door up.
I'm not sure whether Max planned this for Milo, but I love how it turned out. It's exactly the kind of situation that you'd get in like a coming-of-age film. Rock did his best to help Milo using underhanded assault, but a natural 1 on his attack roll left him unable to reduce the enemy numbers. One of the Mitflits even managed to close the door, slowing the party's attempt to help Milo further. May kicked the door back open, allowing Ornifex and Sesto to assault the Mitflits currently grouped by the entrance. 2 Mitflits dead, leaving Milo alone with the remaining 4. A critical hit and several other stabs leave Milo barely standing as he finally gets to act. He managed to kill the Mitflit that critically hit him and then raise his shield, hoping to last until his friends can get into the room and help him. Then, disaster. Darts fly, and Milo falls. The Mitflits threw his limp body into the pit, half to make space, but half out of pure spite. Rock did his best to help, but his attacks are just not landing. 3 Mitflits remain alive, and the party cut them down. Ornifex uses her clerical powers to cast heal on Milo, returning him to consciousness. With Mitflit corpses littering the room, the heroes have won another fight. Before the looting or exploration could begin, I called the session here, and we wrapped things up. Looking at the path that the heroes are taking, they're going to end up encountering Boss Strong. Who came up with that name? Much sooner than I was expecting. I'm really curious as to how the encounter will go. I think that there's a potential for my players to listen to what he has to say, yet some of these characters are seemingly a little bit vengeful, particularly Rock. There's a good chance that the party will strike the Mitflit boss before allowing a prolonged conversation to happen. If Boss Strong, I hate that name, is killed, I'm unsure how this will affect the rest of the encounters on this floor. The remaining Mitflits on the floor, in theory, won't know about their boss's death, so should act normally. But if they do learn about his death, such as if one of the Mitflits escapes and tells them, I could see them either fleeing into the swamps or retreating back below into the Gauntlet. As cowardly creatures, I don't see a reality where they all stand together and lay down their lives valiantly for their dead boss, or for their partially trained insects. At most, they might order all the insects to swarm the intruders while they escape. As things stand, we're looking at a pretty intense boss fight next session, so look forward to that. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the adventures of our heroes. If you want to help out, then support of any form, liking, subscribing, commenting is super appreciated. We're a small channel, so that stuff goes like a super long way to helping out and getting this video seen by more people. And with that, I will see you in the next one.